Hi, Tanya. How are you today?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad to be with you today. And we've had such a great
I know.
conversation before even getting started with the
I know
recording.
we've already been talking for like an hour, which is perfect.
Well, that's how you know that it's true connection, right?
hmm
I mean,
hmm
let's be honest. I think we were blessed enough to be connected from probably the moment that I met you. It was your smile that drew me in.
Oh, well, thank you. I met you at, remember where I met you at a karaoke place?
Yes. Well, actually, you went
Well,
to
we met
my
before
event.
that.
Yeah, you went to my event, the Gather event I had at Gina's house, which she had hosted it. She
Yes,
has this amazing boutique in the back of her house, and it's called Shop School. But
that was
we met
fun.
through Katie. It was fun, wasn't it? It was.
We
That was
met through Chef Katie Chin.
yeah, Katie. Thank God for Katie, right?
I
Again,
know.
there we go.
She
Here
is
we
like,
go. I don't know how many times I say this on every introduction. And I met through Chef Katie Chin. And so the funny thing,
oh,
everybody thinks I'm a connector. I'm sure they think you're a connector too.
totally.
But I think that she honestly is I don't know. She's on another chart.
She really is. She's one of the most special human beings I've ever met. She knows everybody, connects everybody. She's so filled with love and she just gives, gives, gives.
She really does.
Yeah, chef, and she's amazing at what she does,
She
you
oh my
know?
God, it's so true. And it's funny because initially you're like, I don't know, Chinese food. But then everybody loves Chinese food, but you're not necessarily thinking of like, oh, catering China, but her story just draws you in.
Oh,
Her story, actually.
well, thank you.
Well, it's true.
Thank you very much.
Well, I wanted to introduce everybody to you. And of course, I know that as per normal, we'll probably go very deep on a lot of different topics. But as you can tell, Tanya and I have a special connection with one another. And I truly felt seen by her through our karaoke experience. Uh,
Yes.
I really did. And actually, I think we knew each other was fun and
hmm
that we had a part of us that was able to let go. And it
Yes, that
was
night especially, yeah.
right. Yeah. And
hmm
it was a really cool connection. Anyway, so I asked her to be on the podcast, and Tanya Memme is this award winning TV host, but she's so much more than that. She
Oh,
has just this bag of tricks and tools that even when I was on the phone, I just keep learning more about her. I'm like, give me more, give me more. And I think you'll find the same thing. She'll not only draw you in with her smile, but just her willingness to provide guidance in so many different areas. And she is a TV host of, most known for Sell This House for over 15 years, which is on the A&E network. And it's also FYI, known for FYI and Crackle. Currently, let's start that over. We're going to do this
oh,
again.
that's okay. It's fine.
She's an award winning TV host, most known for Sell This House for over 15 years on the A&E network and FYI and Crackle. Currently, the show's airing on Dabble and Hulu. She's also a keynote speaker. She spoke at a lot of different things that I know that you would well known that she'd be well known for. But in addition, she's a mentor. And that's what I mean about that she saw me and she almost like took me under her wing of wanting to know more about me. And that's what a true mentor is. It's somebody who listens on a deep level and knows how to connect with
Mm,
people. And one of the beautiful gifts that she's been really dabbling into and becoming more of an expert in is somatic healing. And that's not just a buzzword for her, that's something that she really feels in her heart and something that she wants to bring to broader audiences.
mhm.
And that's somewhere where we both connect, I think. And
Yes.
also, very important, is that she's the host of the Life Masters podcast. So there's so much more we could talk about with you because that's just a little tiny introduction. But I love it when I start the podcast that somebody else gets to introduce themselves and tell
hmm
us all parts of you. Like, how did you become a TV host? How did you suddenly become a keynote speaker? Tell me more about that.
Well, how did I become a TV host?
Yes.
So that's a long story, but I'll make it very short. Um, I grew up in Canada on a sod farm in the middle of nowhere. And I always knew when I was young that I wanted to be on television. I don't know why. I don't know why I would ever want to do such a thing, but I did. And back in the day, I wanted to be a soap star. That's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on TV, be a soap star. So
I understand
the
that. They
only
wear pretty
way
clothes.
well,
They're pretty. They wear pretty clothes. And
and it
actually,
was very popular back then too.
very, we were, yeah, we used to come home from school and basically that's where we invested our
That's what
time.
we would watch. Yeah, and
Exactly.
we all talk about it at school the next day.
Exactly.
Um, but yeah, and then I ended up getting into pageants just because there was nothing else available to kind of get on stage and practice speaking and practice all of these things that you want to do to get in front of the public eye. And so I ended up getting into pageants, and I went for the Miss Teen Niagara pageant, and I didn't win that. And then I was asked to compete for Miss Niagara, and then I ended up winning that. And then I ended up winning Miss World Canada in '93. So that was kind of what started my journey into traveling. And I moved to New York City, and I ended up going to the American Musical and Dramatic Academy, and I studied there acting and singing and dance. I was also a dancer for many years. I took ballet and jazz and everything else. So I was always performing in whatever capacity I could. I was minoring in theater and in university before I went to American Musical Dramatic Academy. And so yeah, and then there I was in New York. I was not an illegal. I was an illegal alien for
You still
for a
are
few
an
years.
alien.
I'm not anymore. I'm legal now,
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
I still
Legally an
feel like
alien.
an alien. But
Yes,
yes,
exactly.
and and I just did what I had to do, and there was lots of ups and lots of downs, and I worked really, really, really hard to build this career, and I worked like a million different jobs in New York City under the table for a while there, and just kept it going. I lived in horrible apartments that you can't even imagine in Hell's Kitchen, which is now the hot place to live, but
Exactly. I was
back
gonna
then it
just
wasn't.
say, back in the day, it was kind of scary. Yeah.
It was exactly what it's called, Hell's Kitchen. But yeah, and so just and then I ended up, falling into hosting. I've done some acting and some off Broadway shows in the past, and but yeah, I ended up hosting a show called well, I was the spokesperson for DirecTV,
Oh, okay.
and yeah, I ended
That's a
up
big
meeting.
deal.
It was a big deal at the time when DirecTV had only 15,000 subscribers. Can you imagine?
Wow.
And I
Mhm.
was at the Super Bowl. I went to the Super Bowl in Miami years ago, and I was sitting beside one of the directors that would direct this thing called the Customer News on DirecTV, and he asked if I could do teleprompter, and I lied and I said, "Yeah, no problem. Of course I could do it." 6 months later, I was hired to start filming their customer news on DirecTV every month. And
Wow.
so that turned into a bigger and bigger job for DirecTV. And then I started auditioning for all kinds of different TV shows, and I got Sell This House on A&E in 2000, year 2000, 2001. And I ended up hosting that show for 15 years and a bunch of other shows. And it's just, yeah, that was a very condensed version of
Yeah.
how it all came to be.
What was it like being in the pageant business? Like starting your career there. Like there's so much I feel like there's mystery in pageantry, but there's also so much revealed. And then also, some people look upon it not favorably, like exploitation and such, but I do know that like so many people get their start there.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a wonderful opportunity for me. I did not think I was going to win. I mean, I went in as me. I wouldn't say that I'm a typical pageant girl by any means, but I mean, it's amazing because I look back now. I This year I judged the Miss USA pageant and the Miss Teen USA, so that was a big deal for me, and it was just brought back so many memories. But these girls are, I mean, they're incredible. They're not. I could never win if I was to compete now. I mean, they speak like, 5 languages. They're the winner from last year actually was a part of a law firm. I mean, they've already got careers. They're so well versed. They've traveled the world already by this time. They're in the best
That's
shape ever.
interesting.
And
It's like it's
yeah,
interesting because I find that just in general, like across the board, the expectation is at such a young age in almost anything that many of these young women do is to start so early.
they start early, but Yeah, and I don't think that there's when once you're a part of the pageant world, you have it sets you up to have goals and aspirations. I mean, you have to do a lot of public community work. You have to get involved. A lot of them started their 501(c)s. They started running, their own companies, their own nonprofit
Yeah,
companies. Like I said, can speak like more than one or two languages. Like yes, it's frowned upon, and I understand because it kind of sets up this ideal female look. But I kind of look at it like bodybuilding competitions. Like
hmm,
that's just what they do. They get themselves in the best physical shape ever. It's competition for that. These bodybuilders put on 100 pounds of muscle and they
totally.
go and compete. Like I don't know. I got so much out of the pageant world, and I know that these girls work so incredibly hard, and I think it's a nice way to have some opportunity come your way. And they work so it's not easy to win something like that.
No, it's not. I mean, it's not. I mean,
So,
you're the reality is this is that any opportunity comes with benefits and drawbacks, right? And it's not for us to judge one's journey, it's for us to applaud one for actually reaching for something, right? So
yes.
yeah, I think it's beautiful, actually. I always wanted to do Miss Teen USA.
Yay, but you didn't end up doing it. You could have, I bet.
Well, I don't know if I could win, but it's, again,
Listen, if I won Miss Canada, you can.
I don't know, but we
It's
stop ourselves,
yeah.
right? Like we start to answer questions for ourselves that are unknown, frankly.
Mhm.
And like awesome
No,
that
it's
you
true.
went for it.
Yeah, when I was in Miss Teen Niagara, and the only reason why I did this is because I was trying to get into the public eye to eventually be on television somehow. I was always fascinated with Hollywood and TV world. But I got on stage when I was 15 years old and they asked me in front of everybody what euthanasia is, and I had no idea. At 15, I didn't know.
Mm,
And I said the most ridiculous answer ever, and I got like laughed at in front of
mm,
hundreds of people, and it was awful. And thank God there was no social media back then because it probably would have changed the entire trajectory of my future because
mm.
it was devastating for me. But my father said to me, "You get back up on that stage and you're going to compete again." And when they asked me to do the Miss Niagara pageant, I got back up on stage and I made sure that I was prepared, like through and throughout. I was also older and understood things a little better, but yeah, I mean, it's just, everybody has their skill, everybody has their way of creating opportunity for themselves. And pageantry is just another way in which someone can create opportunity, but you have to work hard for it. And
Yeah, I
and I
have a
understand.
yeah, go
Mhm.
ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I understand how it gets a bad reputation, and I understand how women can look at these women and say that they're being exploited. But if I mean, for me, it was just such a great opportunity that I wouldn't be where I'm at today, I don't think, hadn't I had won that title. So I feel very blessed by it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I think you and I are probably in the same age range. And so in which case what ends up I think that any experience is just about the learning and the blessings that we get from it, never to look back in regret. Like it's more like that's part of my life story and it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, the fact that you could go back and give back to the organization and you're still involved on another level with them, which we had talked about. And I think it's amazing. I think everything is just another ripple for like our life. But I'm curious to
Yeah.
understand, what does it mean to be a host?
Aha. Well, what it means today and what it used to mean are two very different things.
Okay, that's good for me to know.
So yeah, so to be a host back in the day when I started in this business, if you're a TV host, you think of like, okay, I'm on TV and I'm hosting a show.
Totally.
And before they would have like actors would stay in their category and hosts would stay in their category and even commercial actors would stay in their category.
Interesting.
And now everything's all mixed up. Like now everyone wants to host now. You know what I mean? And now hosting has morphed into social media hosting, video creation, creating your own talk show on YouTube. It's anything basically where you're in front of a camera videoing yourself. And there's so many avenues in which you can create that for yourself, that it's good and bad. I think it's, there's so many more opportunities to create your own personal brand and have people see it through social media. Whereas before you had to get on TV, or you had, the only way you could do it is to get on TV or get it or book a commercial. And
Exactly.
that was through getting an agent and, working really hard and hopefully getting
Typical
trained as an
channels.
actor. And
Yeah.
yes, typical channel. And some made it and some didn't. It was very much based on talent.
Hmm.
I mean, in most respects, it was based on talent.
Hmm.
But, and now, right?
Wink,
Yeah,
wink, nod, nod.
that's a whole other topic. Yeah.
Exactly.
But, but now it's like you can create your own opportunity as a host. There's just not a name for it. The only thing that I can think of is like an expert in communications,
Mhm.
basically, or public speaking. And you can create that through your social media channels and all the different online platforms on TV as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. So if one wants to get involved in it, right? Like, again, we talked about this too, is that you're sort of required to be an expert in a lot of different things in order to
Mhm.
really create traction so that you can be seen, right? What would you
Mhm.
say like the biggest skill is that you need in order to be received? Like how does one basically, go about, like, say for example, just creating a digital footprint, because that's like the most popular
Yeah.
thing. But like, I think it's super cool to be like we've talked about me doing my TED talk, but we've also talked about like how do you start to create that footprint for yourself? Because I don't always like to use the word personal brand, but it's so much more than that.
So much more than that. But I think the first thing is really getting in touch with your true authentic self,
Mm,
doing the work within. It
mm.
all starts from within because you can't fake it. If you're faking it out there, you're not going to be able to create any footprint. And if you do, at some point, it's probably going to fall apart. So it's really figuring out who you are through this footprint or brand or whatever way you want to say it or label it, but and figure out how you want to make a difference in the world and tapping into your true authentic self and creating a brand around who you stand for. And sometimes that takes years to figure out, but and a lot of tries and a lot of messing up. And every master at one point was a total disaster at one point. I'm one of them.
Exactly.
So
By the way, I like the word disaster. It's like
yeah,
master and disaster.
that's how we
I
learn.
never hear those two
Yeah.
things together. That's a really good way of
Yeah.
putting it. I mean,
You have to be willing to be a disaster in order to master anything.
I
So
think you're absolutely right. And I think that's one of the things. I mean, you're basically, when you say showing up authentically as yourself and, being a disaster or being messy, what stage does that happen in?
I think the beginning stages, it's
Mhm.
taking that first step, and it might not always be perfect. Usually it's not, and that's okay.
Exactly.
That's okay if it's not, because the more you learn, the mistakes that you make at the top of your career when you're starting something new, whether you're pivoting, is like not being afraid to take that first step, whether it succeeds or fails. It doesn't matter because it's interesting how people can so relate to people. Like everyone can relate to failing, everyone can relate to taking a disastrous first step. Like it's okay. It's okay. But if you don't take the first step, that's when you fall into complacency and nothing happens,
Yeah.
you
I
know?
I agree with you. And I mean, I think complacency leads to non-relevance, and non-relevance leads to, not knowing where you belong, right?
Hmm.
And once we don't know where we belong, we sort of start to question what our purpose is.
Well, I was in that circle, in that loop for a good 7 years. I went through that.
And what caused that?
So, well, the hosting business changed. I wasn't working as much. I ended up quitting. I was on a show on the Hallmark Channel that I walked off set because it just the environment just wasn't healthy for me. So I no longer wanted to be a part of it, and I quit. And the thing is I didn't have another job on the other side of that. So I spiraled into, and then I ended up getting divorced, and I was dating the wrong people, and it was just like this whole thing. I invested in the wrong companies, and I lost a lot during those years. And then I could not figure out who I was anymore. When the phone stops ringing and you're not getting the jobs anymore, and you lose your agents and your managers, and nobody wants to be a part of your career anymore because you quit, and they're afraid that you're now kind of have this dark cloud over you as talent. I mean, I was judged very, it's interesting
Partially, I'm
when you
sure.
do yeah, very harshly, but I stepped into my full integrity by leaving the show. I
Mhm.
had to do that for me and for my daughter, and I needed to show her that you have to stick to your integrity and you do what's right for you no matter how hard it gets. And so I did. And learned a hard lesson, and also I was blessed very much because it totally turned my life around to where things are now. But um yeah, I mean, I was living in this abyss of I don't know who I am for
Mhm.
a long time. I didn't know what my purpose was, and it was very, very, very debilitating.
Mm.
It's hard to live if you don't have purpose. It's hard to feel like you want to get up in the morning. I mean,
Mhm.
went through a couple of years there. I didn't want to get up in the morning.
Mm. Yeah,
So
well,
yeah.
I really thank you for sharing that so vulnerably, because I think that what you're saying is so relevant in the way that we all go through some sort of trial at some point. And when you said originally, like showing up authentically as yourself or doing the work, that's basically what you're describing, is that
Yeah.
through that pain that you found yourself again.
Hmm. Wasn't fun.
Mm.
you know, it wasn't fun, but yeah, I look back and it's like, you go to the worst case scenario. Okay, so what's the worst case scenario? You lose everything. Okay, well, I did. I went through that. So I'm not afraid to do that. Like that
Mhm.
doesn't even phase my mind anymore. I'm just not afraid anymore. I live my life in so much less fear than I used to. Um, and I had to figure out who I was without the accolades attached to the name.
Mhm.
And I did. And I dove right into so much self-improvement, and by reading books and meditation and yoga. I got my yoga training certificate. I went and I tried all these different things that I've always wanted to try.
That's beautiful.
I joined, yeah, I joined women's networking groups to meet new people, which is, well, one of you and I were at one recently, which was
Mhm.
phenomenal. I always tell people, like, if you're not in a good place in your life, network, network, network. Even though you don't want to, just do it, because it's
Mhm.
such a blessing when other human beings can show you and teach you and be along this path with you. And eventually, step by step, I figured it out. And I know now who I am without the accolades. I don't need the accolades. I don't ever need to be on TV ever again. It doesn't bother me. And if I am, fantastic. If I'm not, fantastic. It's all good.
Mhm. It's
So
interesting because I think that what happens sometimes is when we reach a certain point in our career where we truly understand what success is, we sort of lose a part of ourselves too. So when you were
yeah.
saying, yeah, right? So when you were saying that 7 years ago you hit this low and that, sort of like you lost it all, my first instinct of what came to my mind was, but did you? And actually through this conversation, I feel like it's like you came home.
Yeah. I mean, it took me a few years to realize that, but that's true. Yeah. I mean, you don't feel like that at first when you're in survival mode,
Absolutely not.
and everything that you've worked your whole life for is quickly disappearing, and everything you've known about yourself is like changing. So, but yeah, I did. It was yeah, it was a tough time.
Mhm.
And I ended up just diving into curiosity.
Beautiful word.
And yeah, and I always say live a life of curiosity, because that is really what saved me. And
Mhm.
so I just started learning and learning. I started a podcast called Life Masters, where I interviewed 100 people that hit rock bottom and got out of it. And I wanted to know how they did it because nobody was showing me how to do it. I was in my rock bottom. I felt like I was there all by myself. I was there for like 3 years at the time. And it was tough. It was awful. I didn't even want to get out of bed. And so I knew that if I embraced other people's stories, because I think learning from other people's stories is one of the most powerful things we can do as humans, is share our stories because they're so healing. And what I learned from interviewing people from all over the world, different backgrounds, different cultures, different countries, I mean, it was just so phenomenally beautiful. And that's now I'm writing a book on everything I learned and how I got out of it by learning from other people's stories.
Yeah. So
And yeah.
was that the beautiful, like, how did you come to figuring out, like, was that sort of like part of your saving you a bit? Like, by hearing others, you healed. And how did you come to wanting to do the podcast in the first place?
Ah,
Aha!
good question, Michelle. Good question.
I love you.
So, all right, we'll go there.
Let's go, girl. Bring it on.
So, so for you, anyone out there that is listening that might be following me, you might already know. But I at the time was so in such a like a rut that I didn't like life anymore. I didn't like myself. I had experienced a lot of trauma and didn't know from all the loss and from trauma that I experienced in Hollywood too, which I've worked through now. Like stuff started, I've done a lot, I've just dove right into somatic healing and also plant medicine. So my girlfriend Rhonda just called me up one day and she's like, I know you're not okay and I want you to come over to my house next week and do have an ayahuasca ceremony. And I'm like, well, what's that? So I have no idea what I was getting myself into, but I didn't care because I trusted her. And I'm like, I'll do whatever you tell me at this point. I don't care if I walk off a cliff and don't survive
Mhm.
another day. Like I was really at the lowest
Mm.
of the low. I, yeah. So I was like, I don't care what it is, I'll do it. And I show up and it was this whole crazy, mind blowing. I'm glad I didn't know what I was walking into, or I may not have done it.
Interesting.
I may not have done it. Yeah, it was probably the hardest, craziest, unexplainable, most incredible, wonderful, beautiful thing I've ever done.
Mm.
It totally exhausted and worn out by the end.
Wow.
And it took me on a journey. Like mine lasted for 12 hours. I took a lot of medicine because I didn't know.
You
I
didn't know
mean,
what
the
you were
thing with that,
doing.
no, but the thing, yeah, but ayahuasca, I know a lot about it now. I've studied it. I've researched it a lot. I've been reading tons and tons of research what the heck I did to myself because it's so mind blowing. I was like, what was, and I understand a lot about now, although we never really truly understand because it's such a spiritual experience that you can't fully ever explain or understand that medicine. And that was like about 6 years ago. And since then, I've kind of, you know, dove right into somatic healing work and being trained as a somatic healing coach and plant medicine. And I love helping people with integrating the different things that they've learned after they've experienced. So it's become a passion of mine in the past 3, 4, 5 years. And yeah, it's taught me everything. So one of the things it did do that night, not only tear me apart upside down and inside out and put me back together again, um, it told me, and this is going to sound really weird, but there is a spirit that lives in this medicine, and I had a full on conversation with it. At least it felt that way for me, and it said to me why I was different. It told me all this information about my mom that I didn't know. It told me some stuff about my dad. Told me stuff about how I got into this position and the people along my path that I need to get out of my path.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So I ended some relationships right after that experience. And anyways, but it told me to start a podcast. It said, use your God-given talents of I love interviewing people.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I love most. I love learning about people's stories. It said, interview 100 people that hit rock bottom and got out of it, and your answers will be there. and then write a book about everything you've learned. And that is literally what it told me to do. So right away, I got into a studio. Andy Waldman's very, very good friend of mine. He has a studio called Studio Place right now in Hollywood. And I showed up and I'm like, I want to do podcast, and this is what we're going to call it, and this is what we're doing, and this, because I know that this is going to help me.
Yeah.
It's weird. You just do what it says. And I'm on my last draft book. It's been taking me forever because I keep getting like, sidetracked doing other projects. And the podcast has been amazing. And then within 3 months, literally, I sat in this no man's world and depression for about 6 years. And in about 3 months, my entire life turned around. I shut many doors, I opened new doors. I did literally what I've learned, and I got myself into nature. I became more grateful. I mean, the list is on of all the different steps I did and to do this. And then my TV show came back. I ended up executive producing another show, which Smart Home Nation, which is on Crackle right now. Sell This House came back. So I was on two TV shows, and I worked consistently for about 3 years, just off the charts. It was crazy, everything. And then, COVID hit amongst all that. So that put a bit of a damper on things, but it was fine. And I met the man of my dreams. We have the most amazing relationship. And now we dabble in plant medicine together. We've been to Costa Rica many times. We've done ayahuasca. We've done psilocybin, many, many, many journeys together. And I've learned a lot about myself and the universe. And it's just been beautiful. So,
Thank you
yeah.
for sharing that. I mean, honestly, other people have shared their journeys with ayahuasca. I seem to attract many different types of people on my podcast, which I love because you know me, I'm a spiritual seeker. So, like, I'm always like, that's interesting. Tell me more about that. But what I would say to you is, would you credit your turnaround to plant medicine or to curiosity or to both?
Oh, these are good questions, Michelle.
I should be a host. What do you think?
Well, technically you are.
No, I am. I'm joking.
Um,
Like I was thinking about
yeah,
your program that you have
exactly,
going
Gilly.
on.
You are. You really are.
She's like, lady, I should just
Um,
let you know you are one already.
like maybe I should interview people. Yeah, I would say it was plant medicine because at the time I wasn't very curious at the time. I would say my curiosity came after that. That's when I joined a network of people. That's when I started meditating. That's when I started giving of service. All the things that helped me turn my life around and get out of rock bottom happened after the plant medicine, for sure.
Hmm.
So I was at such a rock bottom, I didn't even have curiosity. I didn't care. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't, and anybody who's hit their rock bottom, they know what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, it was ayahuasca that turned my life around. I do mean that. I do stand by that.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it's for everybody, and I'm not saying that everybody should go and do it. Um, but it's what I did and it was what I chose, and it worked for me. So,
And
yeah.
uh do you like ayahuasca? Do you have a preference? Like what does one give you versus the other? Or is there do you have a preference?
I don't have a preference. It's just what I feel like I need to do next. Psilocybin is much in generally, but not always for everybody, a much gentler experience than ayahuasca. I would say like ayahuasca is 40 years of therapy all in one night, and psilocybin is more like 5 to 10.
So it sounds like it
It's
depends on
kind
what
of
you
like
do.
that. Yeah, and I definitely do more psilocybin journeys. It's legal in Canada now, so I would definitely suggest doing it where it's legal. But yeah, and I've met the most incredible people in this community.
Mhm,
I mean, it's amazing how my life has changed and how I see the world so differently. Like the
mhm.
depression, just after I woke up from the psilocybin, this was like again 6 years ago, it was probably gone about 50%, right? That next 3 weeks after. And then it was gone about 85% about 3 months later.
God, that's
And
amazing.
oh, yeah, it was life changing for me. And I just saw things like it made sense. It was almost like, it does rewire the brain. That is what the science shows that it does. And it does change your DNA. It has the capability to do it. I know Stanford University right now is coming out with all kinds of information on psilocybin and plant medicine and what it does to the brain and the body. And I've heard people speak on it. You know, I've attended a lot of speaking events where experts come and speak, and people that have done the research from Stanford. And it's been a very interesting journey, but I have felt changes in my body hugely
That's amazing.
from that.
I have to say, like, I
Yeah.
don't think I have ever heard anybody articulate it as clearly as you are explaining. And I think that because, I mean, I feel like I've been doing my own research on it, and I told you I spoke with that expert in psychedelics about it. And I think what is amazing about the way you're describing it is you're describing the mental health benefits and that they're immediate. So there are certain things that we do in personal growth that are a long-term process, and then there's certain that have immediate benefits.
Yeah, I mean, it did for me. I'm only talking on behalf of my own
I think
experience.
most
And
people
again,
that I hear describe it that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I also think it's not for everybody.
Hmm.
And I also think that set and setting is everything.
Yes.
So it's not, if you decide that you want to try it or you're curious about it, it's not, you don't just jump in and do it in your house by yourself. Like you have to do it with a trained facilitator in a safe setting, a safe environment. And that to me is everything. Like I would never, I'm very, very picky about how it's done in my life and who we do it with and how we do it.
Well,
And
and as you should
but
be,
yeah, like I said,
as you should be, because, like, a little bit like before we got on the call, we were talking about what's next for you, right? And or what is for you. It's not even next. It's what is, right? And so when we
yeah.
were talking about that, you said, "Well, this is my life's work. So what I put forward has to be the way that I see it." And so when you said that and correlating it with what you're just saying, when you say picky, like the word really what comes up to me is integrity, is that
Yes.
you are so integrous about what you choose to put your name to or represent.
Hmm.
Because going back to, I never really see things as quitting, right? I see it as you are stepping into your integrity when you talked about
Yes,
the show. And
totally.
yes, Hollywood has a way of, you know, villainizing it, but it was about you stepping into your own power.
Hmm. And I did that through making a very difficult decision. My daughter and I were both on the show, and I actually loved my job. I loved being on the show, but I was, I didn't feel like dealing with there was a lot of verbal abuse on set, which
Mm.
used to be like that back in the day. I mean, there was a lot of that, through the years that I've been in this business and our generation. And now I think it's still there, but it's not, there's a lot of changes that have been made. But yeah, I was ready to just stand in my own integrity and not have to. I knew that I deserved better, and but the other thing is too, it's not, and this is what I've learned now. I've done so much work in this world on myself, like in this plant medicine and in the somatic healing world, and just in my own spiritual development. In the past 5 years, I've really dug deep. I realized that at the time I didn't have the tools. Like I know that if I was in that situation now, I probably would not have quit.
Mhm.
I would have handled it totally differently. I needed to go through that to find the me that I know now.
Mhm.
I didn't have the tools. I had to forgive myself for the, crazy roller coaster of a ride that I went on after that, making so many bad decisions on who I did business with and who I allowed into my personal life. Oh, and so I think I would have probably handled it differently because I know different things now. I would know how to handle that now,
Mhm.
and I would have handled it different. But I can't look back and say, "Oh, I regret it," because I don't regret it. Because at the same time, I needed to go through that to get to this understanding of dealing with trauma or dealing with situations in life or people that you are taking as a threat. So,
Yeah, like when you're
I wouldn't take it as a threat now.
exactly.
Hmm.
I think, like, when we're talking about trauma and healing trauma, we know that trauma resurfaces, right? So unless we learn how to actually deal with the trauma, right? And
Yeah,
and I think that that's the thing, is that recognizing the trigger and knowing your coping mechanism that will best serve you in that moment. That's not of harm to others, right?
exactly. Exactly. At the time, I did feel like I was traumatized, not only from that situation, other things in my life too. It wasn't just that. And that was the icing on the cake. And I didn't have the tools to do it, to deal with it any other way but to quit. That's all I knew. So I left. And then you have to deal with the repercussions of that. And
Mhm.
I did. And it's interesting now because like I don't really need to be on TV anymore, you know? If I am, fantastic. If I'm not, that's okay. Like I don't think about it anymore. It's so weird. Like my whole identity is so not attached to that anymore. I'm so excited about
That's
this next
interesting
chapter.
that that was your goal.
Oh, that was everything to me. I didn't have a plan B. My whole life I didn't have a plan B. And that was all I knew. That was all I lived and I ate and I breathed Hollywood. And I hit I hit a big high in my career. I was, nominated for an Emmy and, I was dating big celebrities like Michael Keaton and Alec Baldwin. I went out with a few times and I was in that world, red
That must
carpet
have been
events and
interesting for podcast number 2.
yes, yes. I don't really talk a whole lot
That's
about that, but
good for
I
my
was with
book, The
Michael
Day She Left.
Keaton. Yes. Yes. No, I'm happy for him that his career has completely turned around. Very happy for him. But
Yeah.
yeah, we were together for 3 years. It was a long time. But it was just I was living that Hollywood life for a good 10 years and but the phone wouldn't stop ringing and I was making a lot of money and I was living in the heyday of what it's like to be in Hollywood and I have the most crazy insane stories. But alongside of that there was also like I also experienced a lot of trauma that I think the day I quit my TV show at all without me knowing consciously, it had all come to a head through the years I had accumulated probably since I was little. We all experience trauma, whether we want to
Exactly.
realize it or not. We
Yeah,
all have it
I
in some
completely
way or another.
100% agree with you. Yeah.
And
No
that
matter
is
how
what
perfect and rosy you think
really,
your life is, it's really not.
yeah, yeah.
Because
And it's
nobody
okay
gets
because
away,
it's a part
nobody
of being
comes away in
human,
life without, like, by the way,
unscathed.
traumas are there for us to learn from.
Yeah.
And
And so I
hopefully
went
not
deep
bring
dive
out to
into
future
learning about me.
generation,
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
you know?
So I didn't want my daughter to be affected by my trauma and the things that I experienced when I noticed that I had these, there was things about me. I'm like, I want to think more clear. I want to trust my intuition more. I want to be the person I know I can be. I want to step fully into myself, and I want that to I want my daughter to see that in me. But I
Mhm,
had some work to do. So
mhm.
I dove deep into personal development and I'm taking a somatic coaching course right now, which is just blowing my mind, and all the plant medicine I've been doing, and meditation I'm taking. Like, I'm about to come out with a series of guided meditations,
Beautiful.
possibly for kids.
For you, that's
And
amazing. I love that.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you
So
really
there's lots
have
of stuff.
a lot going on in this next chapter. So,
I
can
do. It's
you tell
exciting.
us what's next beyond the TV hosting? Because you're hinting on the somatic healing, and obviously, you will keep this podcast because it's successful. But tell me what's next, or tell them what's next, because I think I might know.
Yeah, you do know. But yeah, for this next chapter, I mean, I'm 51 now, and I've stepped into who I am. And who I am is I love helping people. I've loved doing that my whole life, um, whether it was through TV or speaking or whatever that is. So right now I'm working on, first of all, I want to finish my book finally, because I ended up filming, like I said, I was on the road again filming for a couple of years. So I had to put the book aside, but I haven't been, I pretty much stopped about a year ago. And now it's time for me to finish the book. And it's just funny how the
You know,
universe opens things up. Yeah, it kind of
conversation we
creates
had.
certain, yeah, right? And then through the somatic course I'm taking and all the education I'm taking for somatic coaching, I'm starting a somatic coaching business. I'm taking on some clients and just sharing my life's work as a host. And then I'm creating now the most awesome, amazing talk show host and hosting communications course. It's going to be online and offline. I'm putting all of my crazy stories into it. I'm going to make it fun. It's basically to teach confidence, and anybody that has to put themselves on camera, which these days is just about
Everybody.
everybody,
Yes.
everybody. And it's how to find your true, authentic, confident self on camera.
I love
And
that.
so yeah. And it's in the infancy stage, but I'm partnering with the Miss USA organization as well to create. So Miss USA has the organization owns Crystal Stewart. She has what's called Miss Academy. It's an academy. It's a school, and it's like finishing school basically for not only pageant girls but anybody from the age of, I think it's 16 to 28 or 13 to 28. I'm not sure. Um, and there's all these different course
Up still.
curriculums.
I can
What's
stand
that?
my girls up still.
Oh wait, I couldn't hear you.
They need to learn those skills, my girls. So
Oh, yeah, well, it's interesting because I feel like there's not a lot of class out there anymore. So it's
totally
basically,
agree.
yeah, so we're basically teaching women how to interview, how to walk, how to like all the stuff that you need. But then also now a lot of these women want, well, what do I do once I win? What do I do once I'm not hosting pageants anymore? Um, Not hosting pageants, but I'm in pageants anymore because I'm growing out of them. A lot of them want to be hosts. A lot of them want to learn how to create their brand. They want to know how to speak, how to create a podcast, how to do a home podcast, how to do like, I mean, it's endless, right? And how to do a talk show, how to interview, how to be interviewed, how to do red carpet events, and how to interview, and how to be, and all these different things. So I've decided to take my entire life's work and condense it into an online and offline course that's going to be super fun. And I'm going to use the somatic work to tap people into their true authentic self on camera, their brand, what is their voice, what do they want to speak of, what do they stand by, all that stuff, help them create a logo, help them all
Tell
that.
our audience what somatic healing is, because not everybody knows.
So somatic healing, I would say that Gabor Mate is probably the leader in this right now. He has this new movie out that is just phenomenal. And it's basically releasing. I don't work with trauma at all. That isn't what a coach is, that's for a therapist. But it's basically releasing trauma that's stored in the body that comes out somatically. So it's releasing because there's the thought, which I do believe, that a lot of back pain is all in the mind.
Like, yeah.
Now, not all of it, but a lot of it. And I've experienced this before that, I had massive neck pain for like 6 months. And then I started taking the somatic course and releasing. And like, I don't have any neck pain anymore. I was shocked. And my body spoke to me and told me exactly what that neck pain was from. So that's a whole wild ride that I was on. But so somatic coaching is basically bringing people through certain processes that gets to the root of why they do certain things, or why they create things that are holding them back in their life. Whether it's lack of confidence, whether it's certain blocks in their life, we work through the blocks. We help them change their life in a way where they truly they get back to their authentic self, their strong self, their confident self, and kind of,
Kind of like,
chopping down all those weeds
uh,
that get in the way.
but in alignment with their body, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Oh, it's all get
it's
into
all
the
healing.
body, feel
Yes.
the body.
Hmm.
What is it saying to you? And then
Exactly.
through a series of, yeah, of steps, of questions that I'm learning to ask. And I'm practicing every week. I have clients that I work on every week, paid.
Have that.
Um, this course that I'm taking, and her name is Alyssa Nobrega.
Hmm.
Alyssa Nobrega. She has a course called the ICM course. She's amazing. So yeah,
Yeah, that's amazing.
yeah.
So we could talk for hours, and we already have. But what I would love, I always love to ask, what's because you're so interesting and you have such depth to you, and you're so
Well, thank you.
yeah. Authentic is overused, and but you're beyond real. It's you really show up as your true self, kind of like what you said of why you got involved in plant medicine in the first place and after you hit rock bottom. But I want to also ask you, because I ask every person on the show, what do you think your top 5 core values are?
My top 5 core values.
Yes.
Okay, that's so funny because that's a part of the work that I do is helping people figure out what their core values are. And mine are, I would say, honesty is big for me. And yeah, honesty and oh gosh, I have them all. I had to do this exercise with myself not long ago.
One of my favorite exercises. I have an amazing game for it.
Oh, you do?
I do. I haven't marketed it yet, but I used to play it.
Oh,
I
that's
used to
awesome.
play it. I do it with all my coaching clients. We'll have to do it together. We'll enjoy
Okay,
it.
yeah,
We'll
let's
enjoy
do
it
it.
since you're into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like truth, also being authenticity is huge for me. It's huge for me. I had to learn that one. Oh, did I ever have to learn that one? And then integrity is huge for me. Sticking to your integrity and your
Integrity is
morals.
major for you. Yeah.
I cannot fake my way through life. I can't fake anything I do. It's not worth it. Abundance too is also, I need to be working in alignment with abundance or feel like I'm creating and being a part of something and creating that abundance with myself and family is huge. Family is huge. My daughter and my family's, very, very important to
Heard
me.
everything.
And and yeah, is that 5?
Yeah, that's fine. We said a lot. Well, you also said creating. I think creativity is important to you.
Creativity is very important.
Beauty is
Yeah.
important to you.
Contribution.
Yeah,
Contribution is important to
beautiful.
me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you for your time today and for sharing just so many wise things came from this conversation and so much information just about being real and authentic, like, and somebody who's going to really talk, who's so successful like yourself, who's going to talk about her story about how she hit rock bottom but how she came back out in such a real way, in such a tangible way. It's just, I really thank you so much for this gift.
Oh, you're well. I mean, I used to be very shamed about talking about it. I
Mm.
really had a hard time opening up about what happened. I didn't start talking about it until, I wasn't even really fully on the other side. And I started talking about it, but it took me a good 4 or 5 years to start talking about what happened and come to terms with it.
Well, I think I'm thankful that
Thank
that
you.
you found your way out of shame and into to
Yeah,
honoring because it's beautiful.
thank you.
So, anyways, before we get off the call, I'd love for you to leave people with where they can follow you on Instagram or reach you or potentially book their somatic healing session.
Yeah.
Um, let me know. Let them know.
Well, on Instagram, it's Tanya Memme Official. Just send me a DM, and you can see me on my podcast, which is Life Masters Podcast. It's on Spotify, it's on Apple, it's on all the platforms. And I actually talk a lot about plant medicine in many of the episodes as well, and my experience with it. There's also YouTube, so I have a YouTube channel, which is my name. If you just put Tanya Memme in or Tanya Memme Official, you'll
It's gonna
find it.
come out.
It's gonna come out. It's there.
I mean, after our karaoke experience, I never, it's so me. I never look anybody up. Like, I'm just always like, hey, she's cool, whatever.
Oh,
And
we just
then, like,
instantly bonded. I'll never forget. You and I were up on the stage on the most ridiculous song. Like we were
oh,
so
yeah,
uncomfortable.
by the
I
way, it
don't
was like
remember
the
what it
worst
was.
stage
The
too.
worst, like the worst. And we were
But
so
we could
uncomfortable.
dance. So since we could dance together, we knew there was a connection.
Yeah. But we did that for Katie.
Yes, we
We did
did.
that for her.
We
Because
did
she
because
really wanted us to do it. And so we did it.
you did. We really did. But I do love to karaoke too. So
Yeah, me too.
not there. I like to go to nice places. Like I'm just kidding. Anyways, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
Please look
you.
up Tanya Memme because she's clearly amazing. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Bye, Michelle.
I love you. Big kisses.